Hello, and welcome to this Introduction to Monthly Contributions Reconciliation webinar. Over the course of this webinar, we'll talk you through what Monthly Contributions Reconciliation, or MCR for short, is and what the benefits are for you. We'll also cover the MCR submission process, and we'll explain what will be required from you, what you can expect during the submission process, and the key dates for your diaries. Currently, employers have two monthly processes that they have to complete, the first being their monthly data collection file, or MDC for short. This is what we use to update members' service and salary information on their record, which is ultimately used to calculate their benefits that are put into payment for members upon retirement. The other process is when you make your contributions payment to us. With this process, we require what is called a paying-in slip or a breakdown slip, as this gives us the information about the contributions you provide each month. MCR will amalgamate these two processes going forward, which means you won't have to submit a separate MDC file and a separate paying-in slip each month. This will give us great assurance that the service and contributions match. Currently, we don't record contributions down to a member level, but with MCR, it means we'll be able to do that reconciliation each month. MCR also makes it easier for employers to submit what we call concurrent service. Concurrent service is where a member has two or more roles with the same employer. Currently, employers are required to use the concurrent calculator to provide the different full-time rates and different part-time rates against each of those full-time rates. The concurrent calculator will output a single line of service that employers input onto their MDC submission. With the new MCR process, employers can send in more than one line of service per member per month, meaning it'll make things like reporting a lot easier in that scenario. Employers will also be able to record both auto and contractual enrolment within the new MCR process, meaning a separate template will not need to be completed in order to change a member's status. MCR also brings a new function for employers, which allows you to remove lines of service from a member's record. This could happen for a number of reasons, including if you've been notified late that a member has left employment and therefore have already provided that service and salary information and paid contributions for a period where they're no longer under your employment, or if somebody has been placed into the teacher's pension scheme in error, meaning they've been enrolled into the scheme where they shouldn't have been. There are also changes around the validation and submission of the information to us. One of the main changes is that currently all employers are required to ensure that contributions are paid over to us by no later than the 7th of the following month, or the last working day if the 7th falls on a bank holiday or weekend. With MCR, the payable date for your contributions will be extended to the 15th of the following month, or again, the last working day if the 15th falls on a bank holiday or weekend. As part of the new payment process, employers will have to upload their MCR submission before they make their contributions payment. Because BACS payments can take 3 days to clear into an account, it's important that bank holidays and weekends are taken into account to ensure you submit the MCR file in plenty of time to make your contributions payment by the 15th of the month. There are also some changes around the validation of your submission. With the new process, we're going to be reconciling down to a member level, so it's important that the information provided matches the contributions that are going to be made against each of your members. There's two ways employers can collect information together before submitting it to us. The first will be for you to download the new MCR template that's available via the employer portal within the templates section. The other is to gather information from reports generated by your payroll systems. This will need to be submitted to us in a .csv format. As part of the new process, there's a new feature within the template which allows you to import your own reports into the MCR template, which then completes the necessary validation checks for you. We strongly advise any employers who get any information from payroll systems to import this into the MCR template to ensure the relevant validation checks have been completed prior to submitting, as this will help prevent any errors. With the new template, as with all of our templates, when you first open it, you will have to enable macros in order to be able to input information into it. Once you've enabled macros, the system will ask you to input the month you're reporting for, and also the establishment number that you're reporting on behalf of. This information is important because it's what we use to create the file header and the file name. If we don't have the correct information, the file will be rejected. After you've completed this, you can import your data into the file. If you're getting reports from your own payroll systems, you'll need to use the import function. But if you're inputting the data in manually, you can use the create a file function. Once all of the relevant information has been populated, you'll need to save the file, which will then run a validation routine to ensure all of the information is present and correct, and the contributions match. If you decide to use a direct data extract, there is the facility for you to import files into the template. It will only allow you to import a .csv file into the MCR template. So if you're creating your own reports from payroll systems, it's very important that you save them as a .csv file before you import them into the MCR template. There are two types of errors that you may see when submitting your MCR files each month. These are stop errors and warning errors. Stop errors occur when values populated in the relevant field are in the wrong format or don't meet the specific naming protocol required. For example, the member's national insurance number doesn't contain enough characters, or a member's date of birth is missing. You won't be able to save the file until all stop errors have been fixed. Warning errors occur when the member's contribution totals provided don't match our expected total, and would indicate that either the value you've calculated is incorrect, or the indicators used to denote the method used to calculate the values are incorrect. Unlike stop errors, you can still save a file with warning errors present. If you receive a stop or warning error and you're unsure what it means, you can use our guide, which can be found on the Forms and Guides section of our MCR web pages. As previously mentioned, employers will need to submit an MCR file prior to making the contributions payment. This means that for every MCR file provided, we'd expect to see a matching payment to be made. In most cases, employers will be able to provide us with one file and one payment, but we'll cover some different scenarios that may potentially happen across the next few slides. Firstly, we'll cover local authorities. A local authority under the Teachers' Pensions Regulations is deemed to be the employer of all teachers who are employed in the maintained schools they look after. Maintained schools are able to, if they wish, decide to outsource their payroll to a third party such as a payroll provider. However, the local authority is still responsible for submitting the MCR file and making the payment as well. If, for example, a local authority has 40 maintained schools underneath them, and 35 schools have decided to use the local authority to complete their submissions, but the remaining 5 schools may have decided to outsource to a separate third party, then the local authority can supply us with 2 separate MCR submissions and make a separate payment for those 2 submissions. Alternatively, they may wish to combine both submissions together into one prior to sending it to us and make one payment for all 40 schools. For multi-academy trusts, or MATs for short, there are 2 ways that information can be provided to us. The first is that we can create a MAT data center which will begin with 751 and then have 4 digits that will be unique to that MAT. This means the MAT can then provide one file for all members in all of their academies that they look after and therefore make one payment. When recording service and salary information, each member must be placed against the establishment that they work in. Alternatively, each academy could be treated separately, in which case we would expect to see an individual file and payment for each academy within the MAT. For example, if a MAT looked after 10 academies, we'd expect to see 10 individual MCR submissions and 10 individual payments. You have to notify us of which of the two methods you plan on using when you submit your MCR submissions and contribution methods when you complete your onboarding form. Over the past few years, there's been an increase in the number of employers using third parties to act on their behalf. Payroll providers can submit information to us on an employer's behalf by using their own reference number. This means they're able to submit one file for all of the establishments they provide a service for. We then split these files into separate files for each establishment they look after and provide a total that we would be expecting against each of those establishments. For all other establishments, such as universities, colleges and independent schools, we'd expect one MCR submission and one corresponding contributions payment. If there's a requirement to provide us with more than one file in a month, then we'd require a separate payment against each submission. As previously explained, concurrent service is where a member has more than one employment with the same employer. Currently, there's a requirement for employers to use the concurrence calculator available on the Teachers' Pensions website. With the new MCR process, there's no longer a requirement for employers to use this calculator because we're introducing a new role identifier. This means you can send separate lines of service for each employment a member is contracted to. The role identifier will be an employer-generated number that is made up of a series of numbers or letters followed by a / and then another series of numbers or letters. The numbers or letters prior to the / will represent the contract, and the numbers or letters after the / will denote the role within that contract. As it's an employer-generated number, it's entirely up to you how you provide this information. It could be as simple as a member having one contract within one role, and their role identifier would read 1/1. If that member were then to take up a second contract, addition to their first, their second role identifier could be 2/1 for their second contract. If a member needs to be either contractually or automatically enrolled, there'll no longer be a requirement to complete the separate enrolment template once onboarded to MCR. That's because within the MCR submission, you'll have to indicate whether a member has been contractually or automatically enrolled. As an employer, it could be that you're approaching your re-enrollment date for auto-enrollment purposes, and there's a number of members who are currently opted out of the scheme but meet the criteria to be auto-enrolled. You'd therefore need to include these members on your monthly MCR submission using the indicator when it's applicable. You won't need to fill this in every month, only the month that it's relevant. Currently on MDC, there are two service indicators used. There's the Add or A indicator and the Update or U indicator. An Add indicator is used when you're adding a new line of service onto a member's record, and an Update indicator is used when you're amending previously submitted information. So if you were reporting for December and adding a new line of service for December, you'd put an A next to that. If previously submitted information has to be amended, for example, due to a backdated pay award, then you'd put a U next to the relevant service to update it, as well as the newly added line of service. An update line will then override any previously submitted service lines. With MCR, we're introducing a new indicator called the Delete or D indicator. This is used to remove service lines from a member's record. D indicators would be used if a member had left an employment but you weren't notified until after your monthly submissions have been made. They can also be used to rectify a member's record if they've been included on an MCR submission in error. For example, if it's come to light that the member shouldn't have been enrolled into the scheme, but placed into a different scheme, such as an LGPS pension scheme. In those scenarios, we'd need to remove the line of service and you'd need to take back the contributions as well. As previously stated, currently it's a requirement that all files and payments need to be with us by no later than the 7th of the following month, or on the last working day if it's a bank holiday or weekend. With the new MCR process, this date has been extended to the 15th of the month, or again, the last working day if the 15th falls on a bank holiday or weekend. We have to have the MCR file submitted to us before you send across your contributions payment, and again, you do have to take into account BACS payments take 3 working days to clear, so make sure you submit your file in plenty of time. Once you've submitted your MCR file to us, we'll then send you a receipt to your data centre mailbox on the employer portal. Within this receipt, there will be information about your submission. It'll also confirm the amount that you've told us you'd be paying, and it'll give you a reference number that you need to quote on your BACS payment. It's very important that you quote your reference number on your BACS payment in order for us to be able to reconcile your payment against your MCR submission. If you haven't yet onboarded onto MCR or would like to find out more information about it, we have a dedicated MCR section within the Teachers' Pensions website, where you can download and complete the onboarding form, read over the guides in more depth, and keep an eye on the latest information. If you have any further queries about MCR, our dedicated team would be more than happy to help. You can contact them via email at mcr@teacherspensions.co.uk. Thank you for watching our Introduction to Monthly Contributions Reconciliations webinar. We hope you found it useful.